In this video, we see Olympic 100-meter champion Marcel Jacobs using what I call an invisible technique to run faster. I've analyzed countless videos that you guys have sent me, and I see many of you struggle with this one thing in your leg cycle over and over again. In this video, I'm going to reveal what that is, explain what I'm referring to when I talk about the invisible technique, and share with you a few ways that you can improve stride frequency. By the way, did I mention that this video features 3 Olympians? We have Matthias Bühler, an 8-time national champion, 2-time Olympian from Germany, who specializes in the 110-meter hurdles. We have Richard James, a member of the 2004 Jamaican Olympic team. And as a coach, he's helped develop over 4 Olympians and led more than 25 D1 teams to championships across several sports from basketball to volleyball. And last but not least, we have Wendell Dickinson, a member of the US Virgin Islands Olympic team, currently holds multiple world records for his age group as a masters athlete and coaches pro athletes, including a player on the Miami Heat. Also, I forgot to mention that at the end of this video, we're even going to do a live technique analysis of a couple different athletes. Specifically in this video, we're going to be referring to the leg cycle of sprinters when they are in the upright position, which usually occurs after the initial acceleration. Essentially, the sprinter's leg cycle consists of the time the leg is in the air and the time it spends on the ground. An athlete's stride frequency depends on how fast they can complete these cycles.
Stride frequency is basically the number of strides one can complete within a second or within a minute. It's a part of the determining factor of whether or not you are fast.
Oftentimes, there's a big emphasis on the foot strike, opening up the knees and hitting the ground harder. However, what often gets overlooked is how efficiently the leg is recovering. So what happens is the leg gets far behind the hips and spends more time than it has to behind your body. Inside sprint cheat codes, I call this lagging because your leg is staying behind the body for too long. In my experience, this is very common with high school sprinters. Here's how this affects your speed. From my understanding, immediately once the foot leaves the ground, the objective is to get the foot in front of you as efficiently as possible. In doing so, we set ourselves up in a position where we are able to strike the ground more effectively. This creates a positive loop that leads to more speed, better recovery, better frontside mechanics, better foot strike, which results in better recovery and so forth. On the other hand, if our leg lags behind the body, then we have less time to get into a powerful position for the foot strike. This creates a negative loop that leads to less speed, poor recovery, poor frontside mechanics, poor foot strike, which results in poor recovery and so forth. A simple way to look at this is that we are creating somewhat of an oval shape with our legs during upright sprinting. We want more of that shape to be in front of the body rather than behind. Here's Marcel Jacobs again, and what he's doing differently than an amateur sprinter is obvious to those who know their stuff. There's 2 reasons why I say that he's using an invisible technique. 1, if you don't know your stuff, then what he is doing is invisible to you. 2, it brings more attention to this concept. My mission with the Sprint Project is to make sprinting as fun and easy to understand as possible for as many people as possible. If that means coming up with new phrases that attract more people towards useful sprinting concepts, then I'm 1000% gonna do that. If you saw the video, then you know the invisible technique I'm referring to is his ability to create this figure 4 position upon initial ground contact. It requires a great deal of strength, coordination, and training to achieve this position. It's a clear visual indication that they're rapidly recovering their legs and setting themselves up in a position for powerful frontside mechanics. This leads us to the next question. How can you improve your cycle and possibly increase your stride frequency? According to Dr. Peter Wayan, there's very little we can do to improve the time it takes for the leg to cycle in the air. Instead, elite sprinters achieve faster speeds by shortening the ground contact time. This is done by spiking the forces in the first half of ground contact, which allows them to put more force into the ground in less time. Based on these findings, there's 2 ways to improve your leg cycle. 1, considering there's little we can do to improve the time it takes the leg to cycle, logically the only option left is to improve our mechanics so that we can use that time in the air more efficiently, which goes back to that oval that I was talking about.
You can't have the same angle in the front that you have in the back if you want to be super efficient. Something has to change. You want to have something that's going to give you more push. So you bring it up so you can get that power position. That power position is your foot hitting the ground.
2, by putting more force into the ground in less time, we can decrease our ground contact times and shorten the overall time it takes the leg to complete 1 full cycle.
Always only for the, when I say only, like 90% focusing on more explosiveness.
So for stride frequency, I'm trying to get the athlete to be explosive off the ground. I want them to touch the ground and pop back up.
Before we move on, I know a question that some of you might have is, should I focus on stride frequency or stride length? The way I see it for majority of athletes at the high school level, the first concern related to stride frequency should be getting as close as possible to this figure 4 position. This is the baseline. This is 0. If you're below 0, focus on getting here first.
I also look to see whether or not they're power based, which is they're floating a lot, or they're speed based, or their quickness based, which they're making a lot of ground contact. And as we said, there's that sliding scale between frequency and power, and I try to pick them into that little space to see where things are.
Many athletes thought that I have to have very good strike length like Usain Bolt, but not everybody has the same body, not the same height. I think first you have to look that the frequency is pretty high as always, and if your frequency is good, you can definitely work on the strike length too.
In a few minutes, I'm going to show you a live technique analysis of a couple of different athletes. But by now, you must be wondering, okay, this all sounds great, but what are some exercises and what are some workouts that I can do right now to improve my leg cycle and possibly my stride frequency?
All I did was what everybody believes. The more you squat, the faster you will be, the faster you run. The heavier you squat, the faster you'll run. And that's what I believed way back in the 80s. And then 2010, got this program. This idea was, how many seconds does it take to squat X amount of reps? So I don't know. I think it was like 100. I think it was like 225 pounds. I think it took me like 15 seconds to get 10 reps with 225. And that was I was maxing out. I was in my 40s. I was in my late 40s at that point. And I said, you know what? Let me see what happens. I got to 225 down to 10 seconds and 10 reps. And that improved my overall top speed. It improved my stride length as well. Eventually, I was able to get 375 for something like 16 reps, and it was 16 seconds. I was getting 1 rep per second. It was the same exact time, but the weight was heavier. That enabled me to run the second fastest time in history for my age group. At that point, I was 49 years old. Only one person in the world had ever done that on an indoor track, Bill Collins. And not just myself, I had 4 girls that I was training. All 4 of those girls were the girls that set the age group world record in the 4x2. And they broke their own world record, and then they set it again.
In my career, I did a lot of wicket runs. So in the beginning was 1.80 meter, 1.90 meter between every wicket. And then you also can put the cones a little bit further. We did wicket runs all year long, like with flats, on spikes.
So this is very controversial, but it's something that I've used for years to help myself and my athletes. And I'm not just talking about track and field athletes. I'm talking about basketball players, football players. We utilize the running surface as a part of our training modality. And let me explain that for a little bit. Sand, definitely in a position where you have to work those hip flexors a lot harder to help build that hip flexor and also strengthen the ankles. I use grass because grass is a little bit easier on the legs, and you have to really push out of the ground just to be able to give you that good movement. And then we also use wood and or rubber just to help that reactive piece. So what I would do, I'd go about 6 weeks on the sand just to have them feel that unstable surface and actually force them to attack that sand. Then we go another 6 weeks on the grass. And when I use grass, I use hills because we're definitely trying to build that strength. And then I go into the wood because it helps get the brain to recognize that pop. For the stride frequency, my standard for some of my athletes is 2 meters. And that 2 meter setup would have a 15-meter run up. And then from there, based on what I see from that, I either reduce the width or I increase the width of the wicket. If I want them to get real good stride length, I'm going to open it up. If I want them to get stride frequency, I'm going to close it. If I want to see that knee pop up a little bit higher, we're going to increase the height of those mini hurdles. And all of these is done over a period of anywhere between 12 to 24 weeks.
Now it is finally time for the live technique analysis. The first athlete is a high school football player who recently joined my online program, the Spring Club. They have not had proper spring training before, so they have a lot to work on. They're currently at a 5.3 40-yard dash. I chose this athlete because it will be relatable to many of you watching this.
One thing for sure, as we know for the most part. The arms, or should I say the legs, follow the arms. And if you look at his arm angle as his hand comes through his hip, his angle is very, very wide. That wide angle, if you stop it like right there, when that hand comes through the hip, that hand is very low and that arm angle is very wide, which the legs are going to mimic that arm angle and it's going to cause the legs to move.
My main focus would be on the hip position. He can run a little taller. I think when you play it in slow motion, you see that he's sinking down a little bit. It's like not like super bad, but it could be a bit little taller. I think he's overstriding a little bit. It's not right. It's like not totally bad, but it could be better.
I'm looking at his fingers to see how he has splayed out his fingers. Simply mean that he doesn't have enough neurological control of his entire body. That finger splaying can also be seen at his feet because he's doing that casting. The first contact on the ground, if you notice, is going to be toes. So he's doing braking forces. He's creating braking forces. The angles that he's creating, they're okay. They're not great. And that's probably because he's maybe about a good 4 weeks of training. He is trying to get stride length and frequency at the same time without understanding how to balance both of them. And for him, I would actually have him do those short wickets. And instead of having him go toes, rather for that foot to be flat instead of reaching out. And what Wendell saw with the hamstring, stop it right there. Mm-hmm. Every time, I want you to go back and stop it at first ground contact. All right, so you see, his center of mass is completely out of that range where he's reaching, and now he's going to have to use his hamstring to pull himself down, and he's not going to be able to get that stretch shortening cycle from the Achilles, because this position that he's in right now, that's the position, go back again, where the knees are together. Oh, yep, right there. That should be his initial ground contact. Yep. Once that's his initial ground contact, then that movement, let's go back again to his original ground contact. So between where his knee is right now to where his knee meets the other knee, he'll be able to eliminate that amount of time in each stride. And based on my understanding and just looking at this, I think that stride pattern is probably like 0.05 seconds too long.
The second individual is a college track athlete. I've been coaching him for several months now. He has not had his 100-meter time recently, but his personal best is a 10.2 wind assisted. Prior to working together, he's already had proper speed training from high school, although there is a technical issue that he picked up at some point, which you'll see in the video.
He's overstriding a little bit, and that puts a lot of pressure for the hamstrings.
Not very bad, but there is a little bit of overstepping.
I heard her say overstepping, right?
Yeah. Oh, you can hear her?
Yeah.
I'm training her.
Yeah, your
She's learning
assistant
very
track
well.
coach in there. It seems like we've come to the conclusion he's overreaching. He's trying to emphasize too much on reaching and clawing.
Also, he is really leaning at the waist, basically doing a crunch in the air. That's cutting down on his stride length also. As you lean forward from the crunch position, your knee drops. Come from a higher position, you can hit the ground harder. A nice, tall, straight body leaning forward. That's going to give you more bang for your buck. He also is, his arms are a little long coming through the bottom. Look at where Usain Bolt's arm comes through his body. It comes through, they come through right here. They're coming through down here. You come through down here and then you close it up at the top. That's great at the top, but you need to come through here like so. Really, if you really look at Usain is back here, but it's somehow he's so quick. When his arm comes through, it's his arm is almost at 90 degrees. If you look at the fastest guys, like you look at Christian does, Christian towards the towards the end when he was running really fast, he was doing that. Trayvon does it very well. Trayvon, I think, has probably the best form.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to work with these individuals, Matthias is based out of Germany, Richard is based out of New York, and Wendell is based out of Florida. Their contact info will be down below if you'd like in-person training. If you like this video, click here to see how elite sprinters